So I think my first day at South Bay, I walk into an office with an empty desk and a chair, and there's a phone there, and that was before cell phones. And I walk in and sit down, and Jim walks in, and he throws a yellow legal pad of paper on my desk and tosses a pen on top of it and goes, "Go make some deals. Training program's over." And turned around and walked out. And I was sitting there looking at this pad of paper coming out of Union Bank, going, what do I do with that?
Let me tell you one more. I thought of a Jim Mair story.
He took us to Vegas one time.
It's been blurred by age and alcohol.
I can't tell some of the stories, man.
I mean, I can't remember a lot of what went on.
I hope that thing's turned off now.
He is personally hilarious. He can make you just laugh out loud in the middle of doing a deal.
He made deals fun and easy, and he loves to pay you, and that's all a broker wants.
He's the one that got me into this stupid business. At the time, I thought if he can do it, anybody can do it. Well, I found out that that's not true.
Those were extraordinary times. We don't see things like that happening anymore, right? Where there were simpler days, right? And we could get stuff done.
And he's loyal, and that's really good for a contractor.
He is very focused on accomplishing a goal that he has set, and will not waver from that.
He was always someone to bounce things off.
It got huge. I mean, pretty soon he was doing deals everywhere with everybody. He can walk in, he has a really good feel for the really important things, and he has a really good feel for getting to the person you're dealing with, what's important to them. He satisfies them, he does it in a way that it works for him, and he makes deals.
Grew up in Hopkins, Minnesota, which was a suburb of Minneapolis. Ended up going to a private boys' school for all 12 years, first grade through 12. Great education, very small prep school. Applied to a bunch of schools. The one I decided to go to was University of Pacific. I went to Pacific out of all the schools I applied to because I was interested in going to the West Coast. And back then we didn't go out, and my parents didn't take me to any of the schools. They didn't, you go and visit and go and take a look at them. So I decided to go there. My parents put me on a plane with a suit on and one suitcase. Got to San Francisco, then had to fly to Stockton, California, where Pacific is. Didn't quite understand why I was flying back east since I was already on the West Coast. But we got there, I was at the airport. Some guys came and going, "Are you going to University of Pacific?" And I said, "Yes." They go, "Well, would you want to ride?" Well, we didn't go to school. We ended up going out to the Delta at a picnic place, and they had ski boats and kegs of beer and touch football. And we ended up, my suit became, because it was in August in Stockton, hot, became shorts. I still had my one, lost my suit coat, ended up going water skiing, playing touch football, and they dropped me off at the dorm with my little 3x5 card with the address on it, like 11 o'clock at night. Well, no one's there. Plus, I was a week late because I didn't go to freshman orientation because there was a death in the family, and that's how I ended up in California.
Jim and I attended University of Pacific. We lived together for a number of years. Jim was active on campus and met Gretchen, who deserves a sainthood for living with Jim for all these years. And
we went on a double date, and he was with somebody else, and I was too. And then the next weekend we went out, and the rest is history. We were together all 4 years and married right after college, and then we both went to grad school.
I've had one job interview in my entire life because my parents were happy to pay for the education, but now that I was married, there was no money for room and board and all the other expenses. So I was looking for some extra funds, as to what I could do. So I was interested in real estate. And Grubb and Ellis, I went in for the interview, and the guy who was then the manager, Jim Sims, he got out a yellow pad and started writing down a list. And I didn't know what he was doing, and I'd never been to a job interview before. And he said, well, I tell you what, you're still going to school. Why don't you do this? I'll pay you by the hour. And then after you graduate, you get your license, you come to work here. But in the meantime, I'll just pay you by the hour. You can work as many hours as you want, or if you have exams or finals, don't bother. And he has, here's your list. And he hands me the pad of paper, and it's got a long list of things he wants me to research or look out or put together. He said, let me introduce you to the rest of the crew. So he goes out, he introduces me to everybody, and those your desk. And he said, welcome aboard. And that was it. That was my one job interview in my entire life. And that's how I started in commercial real estate. When I did get my, finally graduated, got my MBA and got my license, real estate license, and started working as a broker at Grubb & Ellis. At the time, Grubb & Ellis had the Boise Cascade contract to do all the marketing for the 4 different industrial parks that they had in the Bay Area. And because Dave Brown ran Boise Cascade and he had an MBA, he thought it would be really cool to have an MBA doing the marketing of one of his, industrial parks. So he gave me Foster City. And I had never sold anything in my life. And needless to say, it was a tough going. I sold a lot here and there. A lot wasn't going on. This is, by the way, back in 1970, 1971. But a group of dentists and doctors came to me and wanted to know would I build, or would Boise Cascade, more importantly, build a medical dental building. I went to Dave Brown. He goes, no way we are ever going to build a medical dental building. So I went back to these guys and said they're not interested. And they go, well, how are we going to get this done? And I thought, well, if you guys will sign leases, let me see if I can't do it. Now, I'm 22 years old. I've never hardly even sold anything, much less built anything. But they're willing to sign leases. I go back to Dave Brown. I said, is it okay if I buy the lot with them as partners and we build the building? And he goes, as long as you pay for the lot, I don't care who owns it. So,
And he learned dealing with doctors was probably not the greatest of things. I remember one day he told me that he had to go up to Foster City. The doctor had some complaints and had to see him right away. So he goes rushing up there and stuff. And in essence, there was a light in a panel, and the little light had burned out, and the light wasn't coming on, and the doctor was totally upset. And he swore up and down, I can't tell you how many times, that he would never, ever again do a medical building.
The other thing that was interesting, one of the dentists was good friends with John Arriaga. This dentist would bring John Arriaga by the building on weekends, and John would critique the building and go through it, little bit by little bit, which was okay at the beginning, but week after week it started to wear a little thin, having Arriaga tell me exactly how I should be building this building. But we got it built. It was a successful project, got it all leased, and went on to the next deal.
But Grubb & Ellis itself in those days was an interesting group. The retail group left and formed Retail Commercial Properties, I believe that's what they called themselves. Emo Biagini, who got into some development, Ed Storm, who's Storm and Hunter, Nick Papagiorgio, Chuck Stegner. I might be forgetting one, but that group. We had George Marcus there, who started Marcus and Millichap.
Jim was working for Grubb & Ellis. I started doing Jim's personal financial work, both his tax and other financial areas, and then as Jim and Les Pelio began their relationship in terms of acquiring industrial properties and developing properties in Santa Clara County, they were a good complement to one another with respect to their approaches to developing and acquiring properties in this area.
Well, it was really hard because we were having our second child, and so it was kind of risky going out on his own like that, but he just really had a vision, and I can remember going to meet with the people to sign on the dotted line for the very first building that he was buying, and it was exciting, but it was really scary. Our mortgage payments were $340 a month, and that included taxes and everything. And we thought, how on earth are we ever going to get this kind of money? So it was tough those years.
Yeah, the original partnership we had was really there were three people involved. It was Bill Jury, myself, and Les Pelio. And Les was never been involved in South Bay per se, but back in the 70s and early 80s, we bought a lot of buildings and built a lot of buildings together, which to this day we still own.
Like that. So we had land. We did the Parlor, which was a nightclub together.
How did I get in the bar business?
And we decided just to go do it. We didn't know anything about the bar business or.
Seemed like a great idea at the time.
The Parlor. And they had this great vision, and they had Rick Gaitis come in, and everything was going beautifully, but it was costing way more money than either one of them had.
It went from a little beer bar into this oak and stained glass stage, multiple bar stations, open 7 nights a week, dress code, bouncers, and once again, it was that situation that this thing better do well because we're not going to be able to survive if it doesn't. Well, the very first night we get there, and there is a line out the door, down the stairs, around the block, waiting to get into the Parlor.
I thought Jim was going to do a handspring. He was so excited that, it's going to work.
Everybody went to the Parlor. All right.
There was another gentleman who's been in the business for a long time who was a bartender there, and he had just graduated from, I believe it was UC Santa Barbara, and he was working as a bartender. And he couldn't figure out how guys as young as Les and I were, how did we put together to own this nightclub? And he goes, what do you guys do? And we go, well, we're in commercial real estate. And it was the same thing, well, what's that?
And I was working there, and I got a chance to meet Jim, introduce myself to him, and he's the one that got me into this stupid business.
Probably okay to say at this point that Burke did give out a few drinks to his buddies there. So
It was a fun place, and we tried to run it as a business, but there were some times that things that probably shouldn't have been done were done. So I remember Gretchen came to collect Jim one night because he was supposed to be going someplace. And I think when she showed up, there was a few people standing at the bar, and for some reason they were drinking margaritas out of their shoes. And that's...
My marriage did survive the Parlor. I worked there only 2 nights a week, but it was one of those deals. Working there is not nearly as much fun as just going and visiting, let me put it that way.